Oh, all right, guys, we're going to be reading chapter 9 of Mocha, starting on page 71. So follow along. Let's see what happened to Uncle Stephen. Becky turned to Charles, her hand over her mouth. Her eyes were wide with fear. Don't worry, Charles touched her shoulder. It'll be okay. He tightened his grip on Mocha's leash. Come on, he said. Let's go find out what's going on. He led the way across the field toward the store. By the time they arrived at the side of the road, Dad had checked out the car. He stood up and waved to them. It's all right, he said. Nobody's inside the car. He must be in the store. Charles felt Becky grab his hand. He let out a sigh of relief. Your dad's fine, he told her. The tree must have hit his car after he parked and went inside. Becky began to run clumsily through the crunchy snow, and Charles followed her. They met Dad on the slippery porch of the store, and all three of them pushed their way inside together. The lights were on there. Thick cables snaked through the store, delivering power from the generator that Charles could hear throbbing from underneath the floor, in the basement. Uncle Stephen sat in Casey's cafe near the wood stove with a group of men. He pushed his chair back and jumped up when they came in. Then he opened his arms to Becky, who ran toward him and buried her face in his chest. Sweetie, what are you doing here? He asked. We were worried. Her voice was muffled by his jacket. You didn't come home. Uncle Stephen patted her on the back and smiled down at her. Well, now you know why, he said. I guess my car's not going anywhere for a while. We tried to move the tree, but it won't budge. Then we had to push 3 cars in a row out of the ditch by the big turn. Now we're just trying to figure out what to do next. The town's truck is trapped between that tree, so Neil can't sand the roads. Dean's truck is stuck up that long, steep driveway of his, and Wayne must be busy pulling folks out of the ditches. I know your mom must be worried, but I didn't feel like I could leave until we worked this out. Carolyn came over with a tray full of mugs. Coffee? Hot chocolate? She asked. Oh, and look who came to visit again. She smiled down at Mocha. I'll go fetch a dog biscuit. She put down the tray and headed toward the front of the store with the puppy prancing along behind her. Mocha already knows where the biscuits are, said Uncle Stephen. She's right at home, isn't she? He turned back to the others at the table. So what next? Can we think of anybody else with heavy equipment? We're going to need a truck or a tractor with a pretty good winch on it to move that tree. Everybody thought for a moment. Patrick? Said Neil. He's just down the road. Doesn't he have an old tractor? Another man shook his head. He took it apart this fall and never got it all put back together. Kim came over with a plate of donuts. Looks like we're all stuck here for a while, she said. I can't provide a turkey dinner, but here's a snack anyway. Charles sat with his donut and hot chocolate, watching as Mocha visited with each of her new friends. He felt warm and sleepy sitting next to the wood stove. He would see that this storm was causing trouble, and he knew that soon he and Becky should probably head back to tell the others that everyone was safe. But for that moment, he was happy to sit and see what happened next. Finally, Mocha curled up next to the wood stove and sighed a happy sigh. She was content, too. Then Charles saw her head pop up. Her ears twitched and her eyes grew bright. What do you hear? He asked her. He listened, too. Over the noise of the generator, he heard a higher-pitched throbbing, the sound of an engine. Who's that? Neil asked. Sounds like a tractor. Everybody ran to the door. There, trundling down the road, was a big green tractor, chains on its enormous tires. A man in black coveralls and a big fur hat was at the wheel. He drove toward the downed tree, then turned the tractor around and backed up until he was near it. He cut the motor. Then he swung himself down from his high seat and stood scratching his head as he surveyed the damage. Got a winch? Uncle Stephen called from the porch as he pulled on his jacket. The man nodded. He went to the back of the tractor, bent down, and started fiddling with something. Excellent, said Uncle Stephen. We'll be able to attach a cable to that tree and pull it right out of the way, he explained to Charles. I want you two to stay up here while we work, though. Becky and Charles watched from the porch as the men clustered around the tractor, climbing up and over the fallen tree trunk and attaching a cable near a large branch. After a while, the man in the coveralls climbed back onto the tractor and started it up. The tractor's engine powered the winch, which began to turn slowly, taking up the steel cable. With a creak and a groan, the tree began to move. Watch out! Yelled Dad as the top of the tree slid off the hood of Uncle Stephen's car and landed hard on the snowy ground. Charles could feel the thump all the way up on the store's porch. The winch kept turning and the tree kept moving. As it got closer to the tractor, the man at the wheel pulled the tractor forward. Finally, the tree began to slide on the icy road. He drove the tractor right across the road and towed the tree into the field next to the store. A cheer went up when the road was clear. Neil and Uncle Stephen smacked a high five. Then Neil climbed into his big dump truck and started it up. Got a lot of road to sand, he called out the open window as he saluted the man in the black coveralls. Tremendous job. Thanks, pal. Charles and Becky watched as everyone clustered around the tractor, talking excitedly. Then the driver climbed down and they shook hands all around before moving toward the store in a group. The man in the black coveralls pulled off his fur hat as he came up onto the porch. Becky gasped. Her mouth fell open as she stared at the man. She looked at Charles and raised her eyebrows. Then she turned to the man and pulled something out of her pocket. I think this is yours, she said, handing him the red silk handkerchief. And that is the end of chapter 9. The red handkerchief is back. If you've been following along, you should know that that's important, but I'm not going to tell you why. One more chapter left. Anyways, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.